All right, before getting started, good morning, everyone. I believe we're going to be queuing up a little video for the audience to watch here.
Do we have the video? All right.
The great John Lennon said it best, all you need is love. That's true in your personal life, and actually it's true in business.
Please welcome back the VP of Pearl Vision, Doug Zarkin. How you doing?
Doug Zarkin joins me today. Welcome back. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me back. Hi, my name's Doug Zarkin, retail and brand marketing expert and author of my first book, Moving Your Brand Out of the Friend Zone. In my book, I talk about how to really understand the notion of the different customer zones. Being friends with your consumer is great, but we really want to create brand love. Probably the hardest thing in any business model is quality of care. The ability to care for people behind the eyes.
And when they can see life in focus, anything's possible.
Right.
We'll explore the depth of understanding how trust is really earned between brands and consumers. You know, trust is earned in a series of small moments. It's not what the bigger players are doing by giving product away. It's actually about listening. We'll explore, importantly, about how to build a high-performing team. It's great to lead, but you've got to ensure that people are going to follow. Brands need to go deeper. They need to create passionate, trusted relationships with their consumers. I firmly believe that it's not about a right way or a wrong way. What this book really is designed to do is to help you find your way, to unlocking your brand's power and creating that all-important brand love.
My biggest fear was that I was wearing the same blazer that I was in the video. I have to, can we pander for 30 seconds to, the Australian Open folks
Please.
and the Wilson folks? So, 4-0 tennis player. Tennis, for me, is more than just a sport. I actually think tennis is probably one of the most analogous things to business. Because if you think about when you play tennis, you don't necessarily win the point on the shot that you hit. You set up, especially at the level that I play in terms of doubles. It is about calculation. It is about strategy. And yes, it's about execution. Fortunately, I'm the only tennis player in my entire family, so it's my time. And I think the sport has really started to regenerate itself because people realize that there is so much more to it than just what you see. There's the athleticism, there's the personalities, and I just love the next generation of athletes that are coming up through the sport. And I'll get out in front of this. Pickleball, who plays it? Okay. Pickleball is not a sport. And we're a sponsor of Major League Pickleball. We actually, one of our brands, OS First, is the official soccer Major League Pickleball. Great activity, but any sport that has something called the kitchen doesn't really seem to be a sport. But I am such a fan of what is happening in the world of racket sports. And for the folks at Wilson, I play with the Clash 100, so feel free to send me a couple. So thank you.
So, Doug, we're going to hit a lot of hard-hitting questions today. You promised a no-holds-barred interaction. First question, are you a better player at the net or at the baseline?
I play deuce side, cross-court forehand. Everything's off my forehand, so I'm a big fan of baseline. Set up my partner for the win.
There you go. All right, so we will get into current strategies and things that you're implementing into your sports marketing strategy at Good Feet. But to kick things off, a lot of marketers, especially leaders, come and sit up here. Not many of them can call themselves authors. So I do want to start with what we just watched for a second. What inspired you to write the book?
So when you put a book out, it's kind of the intellectual equivalent of a sex tape because you are so vulnerable. And for me, I wanted to last summer take a lot of the work that I've done in volunteering, both at the high school, at the college level, and get it out there for people who are really trying to understand in today's marketplace how to really create strong, passionate relationships between your brand and your consumer. Today's market, you can go from idea to execution in 3 days. And if you are not really committed to forming a deep collaboration with your consumer, where it really is about passion and trust, you can find yourself in the friend zone, where you're putting a sales forecast at +5 and you end up +2 and you don't know why. The reason isn't because you didn't have a great product. The reason is because you didn't have as deep a relationship with your consumer as you needed to. So for me, it's an opportunity to hopefully put some good karma out in the world and help some people and maybe give folks an idea of the mistakes that I've made in my life and my career and avoid them to help them unlock their own potential.
Got it. So starting high-arching, talking about how we can potentially break out of that friend zone, start making deeper connections with consumers. We're here, it's a sports marketing summit. High level, How are you looking at sports as being that conduit to helping build that deeper relationship with the consumer?
So anybody who's using sports as a panacea to solve their brand problem, you're in the wrong world, because there is not a panacea for not having a strong consumer relationship. What I love about sports is the connection opportunity, much like I love television for the connection opportunity, or social, or digital display, or out of home. Marketing is a layer cake. Sports is an amazing opportunity to put your brand in a relevant context in a unique way, but it is not the cure-all. It has to be, when you do it, part of your strategy. It isn't your strategy. It is a component of. Because strategy without insight is nothing more than words on paper. And so when we think about sports, we have to look at it as, how does it allow us to break through the clutter and form a stronger connection with our consumer? But at the end of the day, it's got to be on brand, or else it's not going to do anything.
Fair enough. So sports, super, super big landscape. Yeah. We talked a little bit about this yesterday. Can go anywhere from sports leagues, properties, athletes, coaches, or whatnot. For a marketer that's looking right now to say, like, go dip our toes in this, or we've been charged with finding a sports strategy, how do you recommend they even start evaluating the landscape as a whole?
Humility. It is really hard for marketers to be humble, because if you think about what we do as a living, our job is to motivate the consumer to do what we want them to do when we want them to do it, right? That's why we're all here. When you look at sports, there are so many things you could do. Putting it through the filter of, how does it allow your brand's strategic reason to believe to move forward? So in the case of our relationship, OS First, which is one of our brands, it's a high-performing sock brand. We're the official sock of Major League Pickleball. And why we did it was because pickleball has become a cultural phenomenon. And the technology in our sock is really indicative of the dynamic of what happens when you play pickleball. Now, that also translates to tennis. So I wear our pickleball socks playing tennis. But it allowed us, in breaking through the clutter, to introduce something that made sense. Just like our work in the running community with sponsoring events and doing a lot of work with wholesalers, allows us to take our brand premise forward. If it just feels like it's stapled on, and we've all been to sporting events where we look at what's going on in the arena and we're like, why? Like, why are they there? Do they really make sense? Pragmatism is the ultimate. Humility is the foundation. Be humble about what you think you can achieve, and really think about how that relationship, either with the athlete or the venue or the sport itself, allows you to move it forward. If it's just stapled on, then chances are it's probably not the best relationship for you.
So, given what Good Feet does, pickleball makes a ton of sense in regards to that relationship and that partnership. And we'll expand upon why that's been successful for you. But would love to hear a little bit about, like, what else were you and the team evaluating, and what made those types of partnerships not feel either right or as strong of a fit as what pickleball has been for you?
So I spent 11 years as the Chief Marketing Officer of Pearl Vision. And I had the pleasure of doing a 3-year partnership with Billie Jean King. And Billy was, for us, an amazing partner, because at Pearl, it was about unlocking your possibilities through seeing clearly. And Billy tells this great story about how she was a junior, and she was like at that cusp of being great, but wasn't. And her tennis coach realized that her reaction time wasn't fantastic and said, you know what, you should get your eyes checked. Billy and her glasses are synonymous, and it unlocked her potential to be the icon that she is. When I joined Good Feet Holdings in October of last year, there were a number of athletes that are already on our roster. We have an athlete in NASCAR. We have an athlete in the WNBA. We have a former NFL player. And I'm in the process of kind of evaluating all those relationships and asking myself that very question. And I'll be candid. Some of them don't make a lot of sense. And the hardest thing is recognizing when you have made the wrong move. I think in the case of OS First, pickleball is an amazing opportunity, and I'm pushing them selfishly to do things in the world of tennis and doing more in running. But for Good Feet, which is premium arch supports, we're looking at sports as an opportunity to showcase how our product makes a difference in your hip, knee, back, and leg pain. Because it all can be kind of rooted down to the foundation of the human body, the kinetic chain, which starts at your feet. So we're taking that humility approach and saying, okay, what makes the most sense medically for us? And then starting to have those conversations.
Got it. So definitely understand where the brand comes from, and saying it has to be the right fit for us as a brand. how important is it, and how are you communicating with, whether it's a property, the athlete, the coach that you're having a partnership with, about what's expected of them in order to make this successful for both sides?
I think everybody in this room probably gets 50, 60 emails a day from whether it's sports teams or networks looking to sponsor, right? My philosophy is I don't want to just be a number on an Excel chart. I don't want to just be a revenue line item at a venue. What I'm looking for is somebody who understands that for us to win, we really have to focus on passion and trust. That kind of goes to the brand value equation, which, shameless plug, I talk about in the book. Brand value, which everybody wants, whether you're making $50,000, $500,000, or $5 million a year, equals experience divided by price. The better the experience, the greater the delta relative to what you're charging, the stronger the brand value equation. The greater that delta means you can charge more and still deliver an amazing experience. I'm looking for partners that can help me deliver an amazing experience. It's not about a billboard in an arena. It's about a connection point with the consumer. The unsexy things about sport partnerships are actually the sexy things. It's the first party data. It's the newsletters. It's the season ticket holders. It's all of those things that are not what gets people normally excited. People want to see their patches on the athlete, and that's great. What I want to see is how I can motivate that consumer to do what I need them to do when I need them to do it. And oftentimes, that's the below the line stuff. I would rather sacrifice in-arena signage for being able to tap that consumer in the newsletter 10 or 12 times a year.
Interesting. So I'm fully with you, and that data can help drive so much of what you might call unsexy to the naked eye, but sexy to those that are working within it. How have you seen this shift over your career? This is definitely new in regards to what a lot of sports partnerships have been in the past, where they were more focused on maybe brand awareness that was within an arena or an event, to where they are today.
So I think if you were to go back 5 years ago, for anybody who was ever in the job market, every job description was, I want a data-driven marketer, right? We all agree, we've seen those job specs. Here's the nasty little secret. Data doesn't make decisions for the modern day marketer. Data helps to inform. The modern day marketer uses data, but data is only as good as the insights that come from it. Data is only as good as the questions that you ask to give you the numbers. How do you get that? You got to really understand your business. And I think that's the shift. I think as bigger brands are looking at sports as a pathway to connect with their consumers, they're really looking for the insights that come from those relationships. Audience, engagement, things like social following. How many people are reading their newsletters? What is happening with those newsletters? We're talking to a big organization right now, and what I've asked them is, I know the fan base. What I want to understand is the fanaticism. I want to understand how the fanatics of your sport, the folks like me in the world of tennis who have a tennis ball iPhone case because that's just, it's such a big part of my life. I want to know how I can engage those people in my brand. That's where the power lies. I can buy TV spots all day on any major sporting event, but how can I break through the clutter and really unlock that passion and associate my brand with it to create that relationship with my business?
Awesome. So let's shift a little bit into current role right now with Good Feet. Setup is interesting in that you have a ton of corporate-owned locations, but also franchise-owned locations. Can you talk us through a little bit in regards to specifically around sports marketing, how you are alleviating any concerns while also appeasing a lot of people who have a lot of opinions that they want to bring to the table?
Some days I do it better than others. Anybody here ever work in a franchise business? No? It is an emotionally driven business. And one of the things I've learned the hard way is it is impossible to have a rational conversation with an emotional person. Sports in particular is so emotional, and that's part of the power. But here in New York, I'm a Giant fan. If I see an advertisement with a New York Jet, I'm really not going to care. 50% of the audience in New York doesn't care about the Giants, 50% of it doesn't care about the Jets. It's hard to help a franchisee understand that what's right for their market isn't necessarily right for the system. And so the art and science of sports marketing is really the art and science of marketing, which is helping to find that balance between qualitative and quantitative, finding the sweet spot of how to activate locally while standing up nationally is the magic. And there are very few brands that do it well, and the ones that do it well do an amazing job. I mean, we're here with one of them today, Mastercard. The moments, the idea of using sports as a memory is so incredibly powerful. That, to me, really represents a brand that has gotten through and understands that consumers make emotional decisions before they make rational choices.
Can you talk us through a little bit about how you have, either in current role or past roles, really started to evaluate, just like you were talking about, the qualitative versus quantitative, and making sure that national strategy set at the top is coming down locally in a way that it should?
I mean, when I worked at Pearl and we did the deal with Billie Jean King, Billie was one of those people that is a global icon. So it wasn't necessarily about tennis as much as it was about her story. And in working with Billie, we didn't just want Billie to be a spokesperson for Pearl Vision. What we wanted was Billie to tell her story about how what we do, which was eye care and eyewear, helped her to be the icon that she is. That, for me, was perfect. It was perfect because nobody, whether you're in Minnesota or Manhattan, could have an objection to Billie Jean King being an icon and Billie Jean King being somebody who, for that brand, was relevant because of her commitment to eyewear and eye care. That was an easy one. Some of the ones I'm dealing with now are pretty hard. You know, we work with a former NFL quarterback and that played for a team in the East Coast, and having to educate that franchisee that is not something that the national ad fund should really pay for is not easy.
How do you approach those tougher conversations? And this is something that a lot of people don't necessarily look forward to.
With a lot of fear. Those conversations are terrifying because, again, you're having to have a rational conversation with an emotional person. I think facts don't lie. There's facts and there's feelings in any business. Both of them are important, but they're not equally important. When you're in a fact-based conversation, you have to remember the feeling side. When you're in a feeling-based conversation, you have to remember the fact side. If you can find that sweet spot and you can get that person on the other end of the Zoom or the phone to be in a rational mindset, you can make progress. But you don't make progress every time. That's why I'm personally still a work in progress, because I'm still learning how to do it.
So we touched a little bit on what feels like a natural alignment between Good Feet and pickleball, but would love to expand upon it a little bit further. What specifically are you finding to be an absolute home run as part of the sponsorship itself or the partnership? And what are the things that most excite you about it going forward?
So I think the OS First brand is a challenger brand, and they got on the pickleball train pretty early. And what's great about I can't call it a sport, the activity, the physical activity of pickleball is the fact that you see the socks that people are wearing. And with all of the teams, one of the things that I do think they have done incredibly well is all of the teams in Major League Pickleball have really unique names, and we offer product for every one of them. So the visibility of the logo is pretty prevalent. It's also one of those actions where footwear is pretty darn important. Asics came out with a pickleball shoe. Nike's coming out. I think Wilson's probably got one or ready to have one. There's a need for it and there's an opportunity. So it's a visible product. It wouldn't be a great relationship for Good Feet arch supports because you don't see the arch supports in the shoe. And most shoe brands wouldn't want us to be involved because that would insinuate that their sneakers don't allow the human body to be perfectly aligned. So you can see how it works for one aspect but doesn't work for all.
Where do you see, I guess, innovation coming into this space in the next few years when you're looking at sports as a whole and how brands are getting involved?
I have to give a lot of credit to the folks at Major League Baseball, and I know the folks at Mastercard, you guys do a lot of work with them. Major League Baseball is a great example of a league that has leaped and bound, jumped into the world of digital, and done it in a way with purpose. MLB Network was probably 2 or 3 years ahead of its time. But the work that the league is doing in creating that digital connection of fandom, because baseball is one of those sports where the fan base is global. You know, I'm a Yankee fan. All the transplanted New Yorkers that live in LA are still Yankee fans. And being able to access that is so incredibly important. My son's 14, starting catcher on his travel baseball team. Every player he knows is because he plays MLB The Show. And the relationship that video games have really done for sports fandom and fantasy football. Last night, my son and I did his fantasy football draft. As a parent, there's not many things we can connect with our kids about. Being able to build a fantasy football team with your son, I got to tell you, I geeked out. It was awesome. We had a massive argument about who to take at one, but it for me, sports allows us as human beings to connect in a way, and that's the genius of like a Pete Rozelle, who realized when he created the Super Bowl that it was more than just the sport. It was about the experience.
So talk a little bit about that. So we're hearing, and I'm with you, baseball has done an incredible job with Advanced Media Network and everything they're doing. How do you toe the line with everything now moving instantaneously digitally, but knowing how important actually feeling or being on site with the product is? How do you draw that balance on not going too heavy into one side or potentially going deeper in one side versus the other?
I mean, the premise of that marketing is like a 7-layer cake. You have your foundational items, what I call the musts and the needs. And those are some of the things that aren't really sexy, but actually move the needle. Then you have the shoulds and the coulds, which are things that maybe are a little bit sexier, still important. And then you have the wants. It's important as a marketer to understand the difference between a must and a want. Sports for some brands is a must, others it's a want. And being able to categorize it allows you to adjust your investment level, your strategy, and also your risk profile. You know, for a brand like OS First, something like pickleball, and by the way, guys, don't tweet what I said about pickleball. I'll get killed. I am for those of you watching live stream, I'm a fan. I just don't think it's the same thing as tennis, but we'll talk later. A brand like OS First looks at pickleball as a must because it's a way to take the pickleball sock that was created for the sport and get it out into the marketplace. For us, an action like pickleball wouldn't be a must. It would be like maybe a want down the line, or a could. That really requires the marketer to understand their consumer, their brand, and the ecosystem. And that you do not find from looking at a bunch of Tableau reports. You have got to get out of the boardroom. One of the funny things that I talk about in the book is you're looking at one of the few men that was an Avon lady. I can sell the hell out of a lip gloss. I spent my first 6 weeks at Avon in the field going door to door. And what that taught me was the cultural vernacular of the business. How can you do something if you don't understand the love language of the brand? And I would encourage all of us, and it's going to be harder for some than others, to get out in the marketplace. The frontline associates in your business are the most important people. You want to understand what's broken about your business, work in a store. If you're an e-com business, work in customer service. You will learn so much that is not on a Tableau report or an Excel chart.
So I think it's a good segue, and I want to make sure that we're leaving some time at the end for some questions for you. But gave some advice here, but I want to expand upon that a little bit. A lot of marketers in this room, and a lot of them are hoping to achieve a role that you have in currently and what you've been able to work towards. What's one piece of advice you'd give this audience as they're working their way up there when they're looking at sports marketing as a strategy for themselves?
Go into finance. There's a lot more money in it. So what I would say to you is the following. There is no such thing as a right way or a wrong way. We all spend so much time freaking out about the right way and the wrong way. There is really just a way. Innovation, the first two letters are in. In stands for insight. Okay? The insight comes from your ability to understand your brand, your business, and your consumer. Don't stress about making mistakes. Get excited about the opportunity to identify an insight and go forward. The leagues, big and small, need brands in order to survive. And if you approach them and say, listen, I need you to think differently about us. I don't just want to be, running dasher boards in the arena, but I need to connect. The people that you're working with, more often than not, will say to you, that's great, let's work together. What's important to you? Is it driving appointments? Is it driving traffic? Is it about selling something? Be transparent. There's so much nonsense in our world, especially in the world of sports sponsorships. There's so much posturing. Just be honest. What do you need in order to be successful? What can you afford in terms of a cost per acquisition? Help them build it. The easier you can make that on them, the more likely the proposal is going to be relevant.
Awesome. Last question. U.S. Open's coming up. Who are your favorites on the men's and women's side?
So, it's interesting. my personal favorite is somebody who's not going to play in the Open this year, Nick Kyrgios. I love Nick. Nick and I have a lot in common in that our mental game on the court isn't necessarily as strong as maybe our physical game. I love Nick. I don't want to pinpoint anybody, because to me what gets exciting about the Open in particular are the stories that emerge. What I'd love to see is somebody come from the pack and make it. I mean, when Radicu made her run, nobody saw it coming. You know, those stories are the stories that get me excited. Great tennis is great tennis, period. Artistry on the court is artistry on the court, period. It doesn't matter if it comes from Joker, if it comes from Nadal. It is about them being able to do something that in my wildest dreams I cannot do. And that is exciting to watch.
Awesome. Well, Doug, thanks so much. I'm going to open it up to some questions from the audience.
Hey there, Gary Killian from Morgan Stanley. Doug, you were mentioning the dichotomy between data-driven marketing as well as the need to really understand the passion and the data system of your consumers. And then we also talked about Billie Jean King and how her vision and the story of her vision really unlocked the game for her. What practical methods or steps do you take to understand the stories of your consumers and executing on a story that feels relevant and resonant to your actual brand?
Did everybody hear the question? It's a great question. For me, it's about getting out of the boardroom. You can't understand your consumer from looking at research reports. You really can't. Go mystery shop. Get 10 friends together that are part of your world, that take advantage of your services, and over a beer, just talk to them. The vibrancy of qualitative, while it's not statistically stable, helps to lead you to what you want to investigate. Again, data is only as good as the questions that you ask. How do you know what questions to ask? It's not from looking at data reports. It's about talking to the consumer. More and more, the insights and the unlocks that I found in my career have not come from reading research reports. They've come from working in stores. They've come from talking to consumers and talking to our frontline associates. Great question.
Doug, you mentioned 50 approaches a week from league to teams. Like, just there's probably a few white holders in this room. Like, what would be your tip for cutting through, capturing your attention to move to the next stage?
VIP trip to the Australian. So I think one of the challenges that we all face is when you get these emails that I'd love to, they put a calendaring request in the email. Set up time with me. I used to be a business development guy in the agency world. Like, no. And don't look for me to spend 30 minutes of my time educating you about my business. Come having done the research. Show me that you're excited about me as a brand, having done the research about us. And it's, hey, listen, I've done the research on the Good Feet store. We have locations in Australia as an example. And I think there are 4 things that we can do. Here are the 4 things. I'd love to talk to you about it. That's going to get me to lean in. The code call, like, hey, I'm interested in 30 minutes, schedule it below. I find that to be so incredibly arrogant. And that's not because I'm anybody that's important. It's just so assumptive. Show that little extra effort. I look at it, one of the philosophies I talk about is the notion of thinking human. Thinking human is, imagine if every customer was treated as if they were your only customer. How would you behave? If I'm a sports league and I'm the only customer that you could possibly sell to, are you going to send me a code call email where you probably spelled my name wrong and then put a calendar link for me to set up an appointment at my convenience? No, you're going to show me that you've done the research and you believe that this is an incredibly good fit.
Doug, you talked a little bit about the kind of organic chemistry between brands like you did with Billie Jean. In this day and age where a lot of brands are just throwing on a patch or getting a deal done to get the TV time that they want, how do brands try to portray and get that organic chemistry of a partnership across to the public so it doesn't feel like it's so fake?
Great question. I go back to the word humility. If you're working with an athlete or if you're working with an influencer, you're working with them because of their ability to connect with consumers. Yes, you have to have your mandatories. What are the key things? So it's personalized art supports, not inserts. Have your core things. Don't don't tell me what to do. Help me to do what I need to do better. And that means having a very curated list of what I would call the musts, the executional mandatories. But you have to be able to step back. And it's unnerving at times. When you work with an influencer, you kind of don't know what you're going to get until you get it. But if you give them a set of core things that they have to do, have to say, and say, listen, put it in your own words, but this is what I need you to make sure that you're saying, call to action, visit our website, success is pretty easy. When brands overmanage, it's like when you have a great talent on your team. If you micromanage that talent, they're not going to be great talent. In sports, if you micromanage the relationship, it's not going to be a great relationship. It's just going to be something you do. And sports relationships are way too expensive to just be something that you do.
Got one more.
So you mentioned the relation. Yes, thank you. I was watching a mic. So you mentioned the relationship that you had and built with Billie Jean King. How did that originate? And the story that you told and the story that resonated with your consumer was about the ability for her to be able to see.
Great question. I'm trying to see. Hi. The creative concept was about unlocking your potential. Like we were working with our agency, we wanted it to be about somebody whose life has changed because of their vision care. And Billie actually wasn't our first choice. Billie was our first choice in the world of sports, but our first choice actually was Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And we actually managed to get to her. And she loved the concept, but obviously the conflict, she just couldn't do it because of we didn't realize that Supreme Court justices couldn't do it. As I said, I'm a work in progress. I'm not that smart. Billie was somebody in sports that we really felt strongly could carry that message. If Billie didn't sign on, we actually were going to go in the world of entertainment, and we were going to go to Tina Fey, because we were looking for somebody iconic where glasses and eye care was such a part of their personality. And Tina talks a lot about growing up with glasses and feeling insecure, but realizing that it allowed her to do so many amazing things. So the strategy, the narrative was in place. We didn't want a Billie Jean King campaign. And if you actually see the spot, it's not a Billie Jean King spot. Billie is the celebrity that brings it all home, but the narrative was really there before her. She was the perfect way to take the narrative to another level. And I think that's such a cool insight about the world of sports. Let sports help you take the narrative of your brand to another level. Don't expect it to do the heavy lifting for you. Heavy lifting comes in strategy, comes with insight. Sports is a pathway to help take it to another level.
Thank you.
Got time for one more? Let's do it.
Great app, by the way. I use it. Love it. Have it on my phone. I'm like a big panderer. This is I'm so sorry, but this is like my geek out zone. Great app.
Thank you. What are the major differences in how you approach partnerships with pickleball versus tennis players, given that two sports have a lot of similarities, but very different in their core? So
I can't answer the question the way I'd want to, because the pickleball relationship is something I inherited when I joined the company. Truth. I think if I were to have done it from scratch, I would have done both. I would have done pickleball because of the cultural phenomenon that's become, and we were riding the wave, and we had a great product, and we got in early. And having that official Major League Pickleball license allows us to sell product on site and allows us, I think, more importantly, to dimensionalize what OS First is as a brand. Tennis, for me, though, is a much bigger opportunity as a racket sport because it's global. The athletes are incredibly visible. The challenge, though, in tennis is that usually those apparel deals are head to toe. And so if I'm a Nike athlete, am I going to be comfortable wearing OS First socks? Not really sure. So the complexity is a challenge, but the opportunity is pretty amazing. I'm not going to say that it's not in the cards for us, but it's something that we have the right product for. It's just a matter of, can we find the right opportunity to make the economics work?
Thanks, Doug. Great stuff.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.